While I was sitting and listening to Scott Perry during his introductory press conference inside the Golden One Center yesterday, I couldn't help but think, what could Perry have done with De'Aaron Fox? And as much as I want to just say, Matt, it's over. It's done with. Fox is gone. Move on. The Perry era is here. He had nothing to do with the De'Aaron Fox trade. Perry is inheriting the ramifications of that move. I said at the time of that trade, you get this trade wrong, it could have a negative impact on your organization for years. Well, at least short term, I feel like they got that move wrong. And now Perry has to clean up the mess. Chris Watkins from SacTown Sports 1140 joins me to talk about that, plus actions versus words and what we can expect from Perry and expect from ownership. It's all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. If you missed my episode yesterday, which had all of the best clips and all the best sound bites from Scott Perry's introductory press conference, as well as my commentary and my thoughts on everything that he had to say and my takeaways from his press conference, go and check that out. I had a lot of great responses from you all sharing your thoughts on what Perry said. And for the most part, the consensus was it was a good press conference. Perry said all the right things, but we're not worried about words here in Sacramento. We're worried about actions. And there's natural skepticism, I think, from everybody around Sacramento about whether or not the actions will live up to the words, or if Perry will even be allowed by ownership to take the actions necessary to accomplish Perry's vision, at least without ownership and others meddling and getting involved. My conversation here with Chris Watkins today from SacTown Sports 1140, we're going to talk about the De'Aaron Fox aspect and what we feel Perry could have done or would have done if he still had De'Aaron Fox on this roster and had inherited the De'Aaron Fox situation, even if it was beyond a point of no return. Plus, we'll talk about the relationship between Perry, ownership, the things Perry wants to do, and how much we trust him and trust ownership to actually get it done. So please enjoy my conversation with Chris Watkins. Joining me now is another man who was in the room for Scott Perry's introductory press conference yesterday. And Chris Watkins, before we get into like takeaways and some of the things that Perry actually said, I found myself like halfway through that press conference, just sitting there shaking my head going, imagine what Perry could have done with De'Aaron Fox. Like it just dawned on me. Like even if the situation was beyond repair, the relationship was beyond repair, and Fox said, get me out of here. There's nothing you can do to keep me. Having someone with Perry's experience, with Perry's reputation around the league, and more importantly, someone who is not trying to force a franchise trade into a week-long trade deadline timeline in order to save their job. I don't know if it's even worth talking about it much anymore because it's the past and it's over with. But I said at the time before they traded Fox, I said this has the potential to have long-term negative ramifications that'll impact this franchise for a very, very long time. And here we are with a new general manager that seems more than qualified for the position. I just can't help but wonder, Chris, like, what could he have done with De'Aaron? What could he have turned either De'Aaron into, or could he have convinced De'Aaron to stay?
Yeah, I mean, I will have to admit I didn't that thought didn't cross my mind, thankfully.
'Cause you're healthy.
You know,
You're a healthy
yeah,
man.
I guess so. Or I've just already, flushed out all of those thoughts throughout the what has it been? How long has it even been, Matt? I mean, like yesterday we were talking at the A's game and we were all surprised that last Monday was the last Kings. It's like it's only been a week since the season ended. So what we're 2 months removed from De'Aaron Fox being traded
Something
at
like
this
that.
point. Yeah, I mean it feels like 7 years at this point. No, I didn't think about that, but it is definitely an interesting thought exercise. More so, I guess, if you want to. I mean, since we're already living in fantasy land, like if you more just think what Scott Perry or somebody with Scott Perry's pedigree, I guess, could have done throughout those 3 years, right? Like I think it's definitely been talked about a good bit. In the postpartum of Monty, but if Monty McNair gets that OG Anunoby deal done, if when the Raptors are in the building and Shams is like actively tweeting that the Raptors and Kings are still talking about Pascal Siakam being traded, like if something tells me that somebody and it's tough to not kind of get swept up in the emotions of the interview yesterday. I think I heard you say it. I heard many people come out impressed with just the way that Scott Perry carries himself. I think he's incredibly confident, justifiably. I think that's like, strangely, I haven't really figured out how I personally feel about it, but it does seem like just his pedigree, his professionalism, and like that is his main tool, right? Like it's not really and not to downgrade his talent evaluation or anything like that, but that's not really, like the analytics is a big reason why Monty McNair was such a coveted name. It really seems like Scott Perry's claim to fame, I guess, for lack of a better term, is just the fact that he's so well connected. He would be the type of guy to get these kind of OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam conversations over the final hurdle. You could throw John Collins into that conversation, Matt. I know you heard that the Kings were, pretty much actively telling their players, like, get ready because on Tuesday, John Collins is going to be here.
Yeah.
So, I think, that I think if I had to guess is like the main thing that I guess to the root of your question, like, I think that we're probably, to even answer your question, still probably talking about De'Aaron Fox here in a Sacramento Kings jersey because, I think the Jonas Valanciunas trade was obviously a great one, but I think those are the kind of trades that we're hoping Scott Perry makes routinely, and not even necessarily for veterans, but just that kind of mindset of bringing in, hard-nosed players who, and just constantly kind of, shuffling the deck, I think is really the thing that we'd like to see the most, not to just ramble, but I think of, a situation like Memphis, and it's really not something that the Kings did often when they weren't good, but, Memphis famously last season, I think played 46 different players, under Taylor Jenkins last year. Like, having that many bites at the apple, I think is crucial. I mean, look at how OKC built this thing. For every Lou Dort and Kaysen Wallace, there's a Pokuševski. Okay. there's just countless guys that they just, took a shot at and played for a little bit just to see if, maybe it was going to work. And that's the thing that I hope Scott Perry brings with his relationships and connections, is just the ability to bring people in and, and really work it. I think Joe Dumars was somebody who did this for this franchise in years previous.
Yeah, I felt Perry really emphasized his strength that differentiated himself from not just Monty, but even Vlade, which is that experience, right? I thought it was brilliant by him, but to constantly be referencing that as, I'm bringing all this to Sacramento with me. I'm bringing all these connections. I know all these coaches that are already reaching out about the vacancy. I have relationships with all these players beforehand, right? I have people from the Pistons years ago that are reaching out saying they're happy that I got the job. Like there's a fine line between like name dropping for the sake of your ego and actually emphasizing like, no, I'm well connected around this league. And now you have that here in Sacramento. So I thought he did a good job with that. But going back to the De'Aaron Fox thing, like it's an exercise that you can torture yourself, because like some people could say, yeah, Fox would still be here if Perry were here or whatever. We don't know. But what I do feel pretty confident in is I don't think Scott Perry would have traded De'Aaron Fox for Zach LaVine. And I know Perry's comments on LaVine and questioning whether or not he's a winning player, those were brought up in his press conference, and he gave a pretty political answer to that. And I like that Perry was talking about him being like a straight shooter, and he's going to tell it like it is or tell it like he sees it. I guess I appreciate that from him, but it doesn't have to be an anti Zach LaVine take to say I would not have made that trade. And I don't think Scott Perry, who seems like a very bright general manager, I don't think Scott Perry would have made that move either for this franchise and the position that it put them in going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think is, again, like the hope with the Scott Perry is that he, has the ability to kind of override Vivek Ranadive on a lot of these decisions. Like he was, I think, rightfully asked, and I definitely wonder, how obviously, like, he knew the situation walking in, but
sure,
when you're asked as many times as he has been asked, just in, his press conference yesterday, he sat with Dave and Jason this morning. Like, when you're asked that many times, it starts to become all right, like, I knew he was meddling, but the amount of times I'm being asked here really would have you thinking, like, just how bad is this? So, you hope that, he made it very clear that him and Vivek have had conversations. Vivek gave him the autonomy to do these things. I think the problem is, Matt, we've heard this before. Like,
yes.
Monty McNair has said this. Mike Brown has said this before in the past. And it's not that Vivek is lying to them. Well, maybe he is to an extent, but they do have autonomy. The problem is it goes away after a year, 2 years. And so I believe Scott Perry when he says, Vivek, trust me to do this job. And I think Scott Perry does think that Vivek does trust him. But I think the problem becomes not right now, not this season. Like, let's not forget Monty McNair, like, traded for Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk and turned this thing around in 1 year. Like, I think they have the autonomy to do those kind of things. It's just once, I don't know if it's success, but just once they've kind of gotten comfortable, it does feel like that's when really power starts to be taken away. So I don't really think Scott Perry is going to be, well, it's weird because I don't even know if you can fairly judge Monty McNair, but it feels like the real verdict on whether Scott Perry is going to work or not isn't going to be found out for another 24 months or so, when it's okay. Thank you. You've it's everybody can put on a good first impression. And I guess in this case, a first impression is a first season. You can do that, but who are you when, you're now living with this person, when you're starting to make future plans with this person? Like, that's really when you start to find out, like, is Vivek going to actually let him do what he wants, or is he going to revert back to who he's truly is or who he has been in the past?
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console is required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed, as easy as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. We're talking about the latest technology for elevated playing, endless entertainment with 4K streaming. You can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Plus, affordable and portable gaming. You can play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. And if you already have a console, well, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is way more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your or your kids' games on the road with you wherever you can plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller is required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Yeah, the question really is like, why will this time be different? And the reality is there is no answer to that question until something physically actually happens. Like that's just kind of where we're at, is like Perry can say all the right things. And I thought he did say all the right things on yesterday's press conference, which, like you said, it's nothing that we haven't heard before. Like there were so many things that Scott Perry said in his press conference in his own way that I was like, God, this sounds very, very similar to Mike Brown's first press conference
100%.
Here in Sacramento. And we know exactly how it went. Mike Brown's first year, he had full autonomy. He built that or got that team to play incredible offense. Now, I'm not saying he's perfect, but I know for a fact as soon as that first year ended and the Kings got eliminated from the playoffs, life became more difficult for him. Life became more difficult for everybody because of involvement from a bunch of different voices, right? So, and that's, I think that's pretty widely known. That's pretty widely understood at this point. So what is it about Perry? Is it his experience? And maybe that's one of the reasons why he's emphasizing it so much. Maybe it's not just a message to the media, not just a message to the Sacramento fans, but a message to Vivek, a message to ownership, a message to everybody. Like, I know what I'm doing. I've been here around the block. So you can let me, I'm going to put my stamp on things right away, but I'm going to keep control over this as time goes on. You're not going to be able to, after a year or two, get antsy and start pushing me around. So maybe that's the side of it, but I also understand the people going, Scott Perry's been here before. He understands Vivek very, very well. How is this not just a continuation of the pattern?
Yeah.
How is this not Vivek going out and get someone that he feels, because he's worked with before, that he can have control over? So it's just, at this point, the words don't matter. It's the actions. We're just all going to have to sit here and wait and see if the pattern continues.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's just the scariest thing, is that I just don't know when it is that we're going to find out any of this stuff. And I think Scott Perry, to me, seems like, again, like a very professional guy. And, I do kind of wonder if how much of it is a positive and how much of it is a negative, especially more so from the perspective of Kings fans, that Scott Perry is so well connected. Because, like you said, I think some of from Scott Perry's defense, I guess, is no, like I have all of these connections. Like it's not like this is Vlade Divac, who's never had this job, Monty McNair, who's never had this job, Pete D'Alessandro, who's never been in this position before. Like, I have 25 years plus of experience in this league. Maybe Vivek just Vivek does, to his credit, seem to trust people who have been here, done that. Like, Vlade has been around the league for a long time. Seems like Vivek literally just says, like, the car keys are yours, go ahead. Or at that time, Joe Dumars, same thing. Like, you've been in the league a long time. I trust you wholeheartedly. If you tell me something, I'm going to run with it. And it seems to be maybe not as much power, but like he also has that same level of respect for Alvin Gentry. And so I do wonder if maybe, again, Scott Perry been around the league for a long time. I just trust your institutional knowledge, which is a term that Scott Perry straight up used yesterday. But within that, Matt, like, that doesn't mean Vivek's going to change. Like, to that point, I think that there's even greater chance for something explosive to happen, right? Like, there's a greater chance that now, if Vivek were to meddle in the way that he, we'll just say, has been reported to in the past, there could be larger ramifications, where before, you're upsetting Monty McNair, who has a small tree of, maybe some Rockets people and Daryl Morey, and that you're upsetting that side of NBA land. But in this case, if you mess with Scott Perry, like, there could be the same way you mess with a player and, you mess with their agency for the rest of their relationship. Like, there could be longer term effects here, in the sense of, I'm Scott Perry, I have all these connections. If you do me wrong, that's a lot of people who are going to hear a lot of bad things about how you're running things. So again, I think it could be a blessing and a curse. That's definitely if things go wrong, and hopefully we don't get to that point. And that also, like, there's, who knows if Scott Perry even moves that way. But I just think, it's almost like with great power comes great responsibility a little bit.
One of the things I was actually encouraged by the press conference is the first question asked was about Doug Christie and the coaching search. And I was encouraged that Perry just didn't commit to Doug Christie outright. And it's not an anti-Doug Christie thing. To me, it's if Perry had taken the podium and said, yep, I've talked to Doug Christie, love him a lot. Doug Christie's going to be our head coach going forward. That would scream the decision was already made before you even had the job, bud. You took this job knowing full well that ownership and the organization was imposing upon you. Doug Christie's going to be the head coach. Take it or leave it. Doug might still be the front runner. In fact, when Perry was listing out like the identity traits of what he wants for this team in answer to Brendan Nunez's question, a lot of those I thought were similar to some of the things that Doug Christie has been saying. So Doug Christie might be the front runner. Doug Christie might end up being named the head coach in the next week or something. But if I was at least encouraged by him saying, I've had conversations with Doug Christie. I have a past relationship with Doug Christie, like him a lot. I'm going to have some other conversations before I solidify that decision. At least to me, that is some semblance of just competency. And we're going to not rush into this. We're going to do our due diligence. And it at least gave off the illusion, if it is one, that it is Perry's decision and not the organization's decision. Although I have no doubt in my mind that the organization ownership is already telling Perry, hey, we would really, really like you to just take Doug Christie as your head coach.
Yeah, it's a weird one because I want to applaud them for actually doing a coaching search. But I've been a fan of Scott Perry's 48-hour tenure so far, but it's just what I wish they would have done with the GM, right? Like it's been pointed out, but to me, like the same reason why you would open a coaching search, even though you seem to already have Doug Christie in mind, like the same logic applies, I think, even more for a GM. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's only a certain amount of things you can ask a coach in terms of like, what are you going to do different that somebody else would do different? A GM, the world is your oyster. Like, and you know, I think it was shout out Carmichael Dave, I guess, for bringing it up. But like, you could have scoured the NBA universe and said, here is what the Kings have as assets. What would you do? And you don't even have to hire that person, but it's an idea that you get planted in your mind, and who knows if you execute it down the line, who knows if that, you know, whatever. Like, it's just is a much broader, I think, a better exercise than searching for a new head coach who frankly is at the mercy, as we saw with Mike Brown, like you're at the mercy of what the GM gives you. And so I'm glad that they're opening up the search. No disrespect to Doug whatsoever. I also agree with you that it seems like he seems to be the front runner at this point. But, you know, I just kind of feel like more than likely we're going to end up with Doug Christie. And I think it's honestly just more important the players that are brought in. Like, I think whoever is brought in as the coach is probably going to be very aligned with what Scott Perry is trying to do. Like, I think it feels like to me Scott Perry is really the one who's obviously as the GM is the one who's more or so orchestrating you know, minutes and, you know, obviously the players that are going to be out there. To me, the coach at this point, like, we're not talking, and I think the bigger problem is, Matt, we're not talking about, you know, which coach can take us to the second or third round at this point. If I had to imagine, the coach that the Kings bring in is probably going to have a pretty heavy emphasis on like development, right? Yeah. Like we're talking about a team that more than likely is aiming for 35 to 42 wins next year. If I just had to put a random number out there, like, I think that's not really, hey, we need a coach that's going to maximize our wins. To me, that's a coach that needs to be maximizing the players that are out there and trying to build, as Scott Perry said, like a consistent winner. He's looking for what is a coach going to do today that's going to make us better 3 years from now. Then I need a coach that's going to make us better 3 months from now.
Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save up to 60%. The last minute deals is something that I've taken advantage of because, look, Sometimes we know we want to go to the event, but the prices are a bit too high when we're first looking at it. Other times we don't know if we're going to be able to go until the last minute, right? Well, Game Time actually awards you with these priority deals that you're going to get on buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy shows, theatrical productions, etc. Plus, their all-in pricing feature, it's so simple and yet so important. How many times have you purchased tickets and all of a sudden at the very last checkout screen, there's like $20, $30 worth of fees added on that suddenly makes your affordable trip not so affordable? Well, their all-in pricing means there's no surprise fees at checkout. The price that you see when you select your seats, that is the price that you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. There was very clearly a playoff mandate from ownership last season, right? Like make the playoffs at all costs, to where they made dumb, short-sighted moves in order to try and accomplish that mandate. I asked Perry directly.
You did.
Like, is there any kind of mandate, like timeline of when you're expected to be successful? And he shook his head the entire time and basically said, like, the only, he kind of said something similar, I think, to Jay Ross and Dave this morning. It's like, the only mandate is that, like, we build a sustainable winner, which is great, but he's inheriting a roster that the only logical path is to try and win now. And even the win now path is not like, you're not winning anything. You're just making it to the playoffs, maybe, and then getting bounced in the first or maybe at best second round. So, like, if I'm Perry, I'm also looking around and assessing the last 6 months of how this organization, the decisions that this organization has made, and said, like, we need to establish a very clear direction here, and we can't waver from it as soon as something changes, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. If we're ahead of schedule, great. If we make some moves and put together a young team and Doug Christie figures something out and suddenly this team is in the mix for a playoff spot, that's wonderful. We can't take a shortcut, stay on the path. Or if it's bad the first year, like you just said, if it's a 32-win team, okay, stick with it, because now we're adding a draft pick on top of that. Maybe we're going out and getting a couple of young players. We're getting off some bad contracts. So I think that's the area, one of the many areas that I'm most skeptical, is that Perry will be given the time, in addition to the autonomy, to actually execute his vision, and not, okay, let's reassess after a year and, we don't like how that year went, so now we want to make a drastic change.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I love this comparison. I definitely don't think Kings fans want to hear this comparison, but realistically, in my mind, and I guess I'll say the proof is in the contract, or in the new contract, but I view the Kings these next 3 to 4 years as like a Portland Trailblazers. Like, the Blazers have been perennially, like, 12th around, anywhere from 11th, 12th, 13th in the West, but they have had Chauncey Billups in that role for the past couple years. I don't think anyone would say that from a wins and losses perspective, with the exception of like points of this year, that the Blazers have been successful. And yet I say proof is in the contract. They just re-up Chauncey Billups for another. Like, I say that to say there needs to be an understanding of, to your point, like, it doesn't matter. Like, there needs to be a greater goal. Sure. Like, than not necessarily winning games, but just because you didn't reach the playoffs in your tenure, if the coach still maybe and of course, maybe I'm not super tapped into what Chauncey's been doing behind the scenes. It does seem like they have a really good, to my earlier point, like a good player development system going on. Right. Tamani Kamara has been a player that's emerged from them. Denny Advia had a massive year. Obviously some sketchy things going on with Scoot Henderson, but it seems like he's finding his game late in the year. Like, I think if Doug is going to be the coach, to me, that, and we know Doug does have a certain level of, let's call it, institutional stability. To me, that makes, I don't like it. I especially covering the team, I think it would be a lot of, especially if we're talking about 2 to 3 years here, like, that's a long time, or it feels, as you're going through it, like a long time. But to me, that feels like if we're really trying to go brick by brick and lay a foundation for something like that, to me, and maybe you can obviously be a little bit more successful along the lines, doesn't mean you have to be exactly 12th every year, but I think that's more the tier of team that I feel like this team is headed towards. And obviously that's more so if they move on from their start. Like if they're going to continue to have, Zach LaVine, Sabonis, DeRozan, I just think that they're going to perennially be in this play-in spot. But to me, that doesn't seem to be the kind of team that they're building towards.
Were there any other than what we've talked about, any other takeaways for you from the Scott Perry presser? Just anything he said that stood out to you, or just any feelings that you had about him that you took away from that 30 minutes that he spent on that podium?
I wouldn't say anything major. Again, just like his confidence definitely stuck out. I would say, I think you brought it up earlier. It was definitely something I was on the side of like, especially the immediacy of him being named the GM. I was a little concerned that this is just, okay, this is more of the same. This is just Vivek being able to do what he wants through this vessel that he clearly trusts a lot and, didn't even want to do a GM search for. Like, I use the phrasing, this is hiring Vlade without hiring Vlade. And after the presser, and again, like I said earlier, like this thing is more so going to be determined in the next couple years than a couple months. But it felt after the presser as if, like, again, Scott Perry's so confident, so well connected. Like it felt like, and like this is, I can't say no disrespect to Scott Perry, but like where I thought he might have been a puppet, it definitely seemed like this is a guy who. Independent thinker, like
sure.
he feels confident in how he doesn't seem like the type of dude who would get stepped over. I think is more so the vibe I got. Like I'll call a spade. Like Pete D'Alessandro is peak getting stepped over. Like that guy, I think that guy definitely was not, standing up for his beliefs in any major ways, especially when Vivek is in the room. Like I think that Scott Perry, to me, and he just feels like the kind of guy who operates and runs a room. I kind of would like compare him. I was saying, in college football, you can have recruiters, you can have guys who specialize in building, Sean McVay type X's and O's, or you can have your Nick Sabans and like be a CEO. Like you're somebody who definitely has a long-term vision, your hands in everything. Like that to me is the kind of guy that Scott Perry seems like he is somebody who is more so here to get things tightened up at every level, get the business. Not that, the Kings necessarily need off the court help, but, just making sure, to your earlier point, Matt, like Mike Brown said earlier, the horizontal and vertical alignment. Like I thought Scott Perry pretty much said it without using the exact words that Mike Brown used. I think it's the same problem, same solution. It's just been around for so long. Like they just need to have the coaching staff on the same line as the front office.
Yeah. Finally, Chris, kind of building off of that, what did you make of his comments about buying everybody a mirror to look in? And I'm a straight shooter, and he used accountability. And these are all words that we've heard before. And then, but I couldn't help but thinking when listening to it back, like, okay, but the last guy that tried to do this got fired because there are certain people in this organization that did not like being held accountable. Right. And I'm like not accusing anybody specifically, but like we know certain players did not like the way Mike held them accountable. Not that Mike did everything perfectly, or there's even been comments from Doug Christie that I thought were a little odd. Like Doug made the comments after the last game of the season, the loss in the play, when they got embarrassed, and he made these comments like people, everybody's talking now when we're bad, but wait till the rabbit has the gun or something like that. And I'm thinking where is this coming from? Like, If Perry wants to come in and try and hold everybody accountable, I love it. It's what needs to happen. But is it because he's the general manager and not the head coach that people are going to listen to him? Is ownership going to be allowed to? Are they going to allow themselves to be held accountable by the guy that they hired? Who they have I get that's the most believe it when I see it element of anything is all these words are great. All this stuff needs to happen. But why is Perry going to be different? Why is Perry going to be able to come in here and hold his coaches and his players and his ownership accountable while also being willing to be held accountable? Like, why is that going to change? That's the thing where I don't know if we'll ever get a clear, definitive answer to, but that to me has to be at the root or the foundation of true change here in this organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic point, and all you can really say is, from things that I wouldn't say I've heard, but they've been kind of preparing for this to be a big shift of an offseason, and the only hope is that this is the part of the documentary where everything changes, and I think that's really the answer, right? Is Scott Perry has to be true to his word, and really, like, your actions have to stand behind it. Like, there is no like, that's DeMar DeRozan, and not to single out DeMar DeRozan, or that's just a random name that came up, but like, you don't fall in line with the type of players or the type of accountability that I'm looking for, you're gone. Like, right. It can't be, it can't be just words. I think that's the biggest point here is Scott Perry seems to have the right attitude. He seems to have the right mentality, no doubt. Definitely said a lot of the right things, but it just needs to be put into practice. Like, the Kings can't, say they want to be something, but then at every turn spit at it in the face, like they legitimately have to be about these words. And, I hate to say it again, but like, only time will tell. Like, right. This is, we think like it's a new person in charge. It's an opportunity for a fresh start for a lot of people. It's just a matter of if they take that fresh opportunity and it truly feels like something new. Like, I think, it's happened before. I can't pinpoint exactly when it was, but I know it's happened within the Vivek Ranadive era, right, Matt? Like, we have gone in the Vivek Ranadive era from, oh my God, this is absolutely terrible, to, oh, it actually seems like there's like competent business people in charge. It seems like the front office is pretty well put together. But then it just crumbles. So we know it's possible. We know that it can just be as simple as you get one person in and then it's a domino effect to get other good people in. But it just has to happen, and it has to maintain. And I think that's, of course, just been, sustainability has been the biggest word since they got eliminated from the play-in. And it's really tough. It's one of those things where, of course, like, you can – sustainability for the sake of sustainability isn't very good either. Like, don't just keep people for the sake of keeping people if they're bad. Like, you have to have, again, just to use Scott Perry's words, not against him, but to highlight something, like, you have to have a North Star, and you have to believe in that North Star, and really try and craft everything possible to try and get to your ideal destination. And like you mentioned earlier, can't let random things pop up and divert you from what your goal is, because I think that's a little bit of what happened here in Sacramento to get here. Is they had a vision, and just so many random things happened to the point where we now got to the point where we don't have a coach. We don't have a point guard after drafting 3/4, if you want to count Devin Carter, franchise point guards. Like, things can spiral quickly if you lose your purpose, and it felt like the Kings lost their purpose, I don't know, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I guess it's just show me, right? I think that's the entire fan base is just show me. And then once they get back to, hopefully soon, when they get back to being good again and being in the playoffs, then it's okay, now show me more. Like, show me that you can take it the next step now. So for what it's worth, like a press conference, all it is words. Perry said all the right things. So he got off to a strong start, but the actions are what everybody cares about. And we'll see what actions he can pull off here during this offseason over the next 6 months before we actually have real Kings basketball back. Chris, it won't be the last time during this offseason that we chat, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I guess we'll see. That's all we can do is just wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see, Matt. We'll see.